I am Reverend Karen Lewis. I am the other senior minister here. Together we make a really good pair, Leslie and I think. This week we have been talking about that a lot, how blessed we feel that this community is supporting two senior ministers so that we are able to minister to one another, that we are able to lift each other up. So thank you to the entire community for that. What a great morning already. And I always love it, how everything falls in alignment. That reading, which was amazing, I'm like, oh, there's my talk right there, you know. And then the music and the feeling tone and the participation that we feel from so many beloveds who have chosen to stay home today in bed while it's raining here in Phoenix and watching the service. And that's all perfect. So we are blessed. We are so blessed. So today, I'm going to talk about spiritual practice. And I'm going to talk about it in a little different way, because you see, as long as spiritual practice is something that we have to remind ourselves to do, we have to have a certain environment in order to be able to connect and cultivate that connection with the divine within. It is something that is being added to our to-do list. And I don't know about you, but my to-do list is plenty long. I don't need to add something to it. How about you? Yeah, right? So then we ask ourselves, how can then spiritual practice, this idea that we call spiritual practice, to be in close alignment with the divine of our own understanding, how can we cultivate it, play with it, without having to change something? And that is how this week showed up for me. This week here at the New Vision Center was such a beautiful representation of how amazing it can be when each one of us gives their gift and trust that the rest is being taken care of. Do you know what I'm talking about? We had people who said, I want to share the gift of comedy, the gift of my voice, the gift of dance, the gift of dressing up, whatever the gift. I want to share it. And then there were other people who said, I want to share coming here and preparing prior, days ahead of this palooza that just took place. And people who said, I want to be part of bringing beauty forth. And others who said, I am going to come and I'm going to chop onions. And you know what? It was so beautiful that everything got taken care of. All of us together created that experience. And that is, for me, the ultimate, because that is when we bring spiritual practice into everyday living. Because make no mistake, those onions were chopped with love. Every act was vulnerable and showed a part of them they usually don't show. And every person who came and participated felt the blessing of that evening. And so my talk title is called I Believe in Myself. Because I look back onto my life and I can clearly identify the time when I didn't believe in myself. The time when I felt that life was just happening to me and it had nothing to do with what I brought to it. It was just chance. And I can pinpoint the moment when I learned a different way of living. When I walked through those doors at our other location 13, 14 years ago now, the moment I walked into those doors and I felt the difference, and I saw people who lived their lives differently than I did, that was when I started my path of discovering that I can trust myself. Because there's something within me that has always been, it will always be. It is my particular spark of the divine. And as I have that particular spark, each other person has their particular spark of the divine. For we are all manifestations of that which is greater than we are. That is what this teaching says. That is what we sing, what we pray, what you're going to hear about for the next 20 minutes. I won't make the same joke again that I'll be speaking for 3 hours. I won't do that today. But that is what we believe in. And we have to be willing to let it come from those words, as beautiful as they are, and allow it to penetrate our deepest being. That when we wake up, we are in spiritual practice. When we wake up, we live our day from that place of knowingness that we live in an infinite universe, and whatever my good is on its way. And my work is to get out of the way and to receive it and to acknowledge it and to celebrate it. And to be willing to celebrate my successes with the same enthusiasm and vigor as I celebrate any other person's success. And when we're able to do that, we truly live this teaching. And there's no need to set an alarm for 20 minutes to sit in the Om seat. Because that communion with the divine takes place when we look at another, when we smile at someone, when we have a cup of coffee. I love this teaching, absolutely love this teaching. And it is interesting to me that out there in the world, there are people who have come to understand how to create without having heard about Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of this teaching. Or maybe they have heard about it. I don't know. But there are people in the world who, for some reason, woke up and knew what it would take for them to manifest, to bring forth into their experience exactly what they wanted. And I find that fascinating. And so we are going to hear from one of those people, and we have a little clip prepared, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards.
It seemed like you willed it to happen. You really just...
I really honestly did. I mean, I'm a huge visualizer and a manifester, so I literally spent, every night of my life for about 4 years on Mulholland Drive after I do the comedy clubs, manifesting my life. So I made a check to myself for $10 million for acting services rendered, paid to the order of Jim Carrey, post-dated Thanksgiving 1995, stuck it in my wallet, and 6 months before that due date came due, I was making $10 million for a movie.
I mean, it's an incredible story.
Pretty crazy.
And did you catch the check?
Yeah, I gave it to my dad. I gave my dad that check.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It was an Irish teacher I had in the second grade who said, you know, whenever I want something, I pray to the Virgin Mary and I ask her to ask God for it. And you know, I promise something in return and I get whatever I want. Like that, and I went, I need a bike. I went home and I prayed for a bike, and 2 weeks later I walked into the living room and there was a brand new Mustang bike with a banana seat and you know, chopper handlebars sitting in the middle of the living room. And I said, what's this? And they said, you won it in a raffle. And it turns out I won it in a raffle that I never entered. That a friend of mine went into a sporting goods store and put my name in the raffle as well as his. So that was 2 weeks later. So wow. I've kind of been doing that a lot ever since.
Did you give him the bike?
Well, did you give him the bike? Well, the answer is no. He did not give him the bike, but he did let him ride it a couple of times, is what he said. So Jim Carrey, I love that. I love that story, and you might have heard it before, that he wrote himself a $10 million check for acting services rendered. Let's take a breath. Let's take a breath. You see, if you were saying in your mind, well, it's Jim Carrey, I invite you to go back in time. He wrote that check in 1993, I believe, a couple years before the due date. If you would write yourself a check at this moment, what do you think you would put on there? I think it's an interesting contemplation. He got paid $10 million. What I find really surprising, that it was for the movie Dumb and Dumber. Dumb or Dumber. That is a shocker to me. But we are not here to discuss my taste in films. And when he says, when he's asked what he did with the check, the story actually is when his dad passed away, Jim Carrey placed a check into the breast pocket of his dad. And he was buried with it. And so he is somebody that so fully believes that everything is created twice. And we have heard that, right? And we know that. Think about the chair you're sitting in, the bed you're hanging out with. Look around, pick anything. Take last night's Palooza. Everything is created twice. First, it is created in somebody's mind. Somebody has to have this idea. Somebody has to connect with the idea that is floating around. And has to say, let's have a patio palooza. Let's build a chair. Let's create, fill in the blank. It has to come first from our mind, and then it is being created in form. But what do we often do with when we want something in our lives? I don't know about you, but I used to do this. I have this hole in myself. I don't feel love. Will you love me? Will you love me? Maybe if I wear something different? Right? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. This idea that we are becoming aware of a lack within us, and often it is either I am not enough or there is not enough. And this is true for love, for peace, for harmony, for financial good, for health, for well-being, anything. And here is when life really changes. When I recognize that there is something that I want to bring forth into my life, and I am so confident, I so believe in myself, that I know that I can call it forth. And so then this teaching and this community becomes the place that over and over and over again asks us to lay down that limiting belief. Just lay it down. And we are here to support one another. We have a couple of slides from other beloveds who say it a little differently. There's Maya Angelou who says, "Ask for what you want and be prepared to get it." There was that moment yesterday when one of our beloved community members had signed up to do a comedy show, a comedy act at the Palooza, and it was her first time. And she went up onto the platform, and you could tell, this is a big, big thing. Be prepared to get what you're asking for. And she did amazing. It was amazing. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "Once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen." Indeed. And then there is Ernest Holmes, the founder of this teaching. "There's nothing in the universal order that denies the individual's good or self-expression, so long as such self-expression does not contradict the general good, does not contradict goodness itself." They are the rules. Pretty clear. Whatever is in your heart that you desire, nothing is in the way as long as it is in alignment with the overall goodness of everyone. It reminded me of that Zen story where a woman went to the Buddhists and asked if she could see heaven and hell. And they talked about it, and they said, yeah, the wish was granted. And so she came in, and they asked, what would you like to see first? And she said, hell. And so they blindfolded her. And when they took the blindfold off, she found herself at the entry of a great big hall. And in the center of the hall was a table that was filled with the most delicious foods. And the people there were constrained to their chairs, and they were just far enough away that the food was out of reach. There was a lot of sorrow and heaviness in this place. And each person had chopsticks that were 3 feet long that they could reach the food with. But they were haggard, skinny, hungry. And the woman said, okay, I saw enough. I'm ready to see heaven. And they put the blindfold back on her. And when they removed the blindfold again, she was surprised to find herself at the doorway, at the entryway of a great big hall. Looked exactly like the other one. The table in the center, laden with all the best food you could imagine. The people back with their chairs just out of arm lengths reach away from the food. And yet these people were plump. They were well-fed. They were happy. There was laughter. There was conversation. There was joy. They too had 3 feet long chopsticks, and they used them to feed one another. And that made all the difference. Now take that story in for a moment. Could it be that right where we are, the goodness of life is pouring itself forth? One another through NVC circles and to expand the reach of our love through community outreach, which, by the way, today is the last day to contribute to our pajama drive. I heard we are just close to 70 and we have some funds to go shopping, so we will definitely go over 100. But if you feel so called to drop off a pajama or to contribute to the effort, please feel free to do so today. So these are our missions, right? This is what we stand for. This is what we do. And a couple of months ago, I was in a conversation with a beloved, and she said, I really would like to have a manifested prayer wall again. And you might remember, we used to have one. We used to have a wall where people were invited, our congregants, each one of you and you, were invited to share your manifested prayer with this congregation. And so I made that my manifested prayer. I made that my intention to have a manifested prayer wall again. Now here's the kicker. Jeff? Thank you. First of all, I really want to acknowledge Celeste Morin and Stephen Black for building this. Isn't this beautiful? Yes. And here is the thing. It is just a pretty wall until we populate it with our manifested prayer. Until we are willing to go ahead and say, this is what I put my intention on. And it became reality. So in the seat in front of you, and if you are sitting in the first row, we have somebody who is going to bring you these manifested prayer cards. Now, here is the invitation. For those at home or wherever you are on our online ministry, we ask you to put your manifested prayer, something you are aware of that you put your intention on and it came to fruition, put that into the chat and we will make sure that somebody will write it down and put it on the wall. Those of you here, if you connect with something, if you say, you know what, I just put my focus on that and lo and behold, it came true. I am living it right now. It is the job. It's the perfect job. It is the relationship. It is the health in my beingness. Would you be willing to write that down? And then we will share it with the congregation. Because I don't know about you, but nothing trumps experience. And it doesn't have to be our own experience. To read that another manifested this good in their life helps us to trust and believe in ourselves so much because we trust and believe in the divine that is at the center of our being. In a moment, when we do our offertory, if you do have a manifested prayer that you want to share, you can just put it into the receptacles. And if you didn't connect with anything right now, please take those cards home with you. Get clear on what is it that I want to bring into my life. And see the goodness unfold. Jim Carrey says, you can't just have an intention and then go eat a sandwich. You got to treat and then move your feet. I am so grateful we are together on this journey of knowing what it is that we want to bring forth in the world and being willing to do the work to make it so. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to ask the ministers of this teaching, the practitioners, please rise. Let us hold this space together. If you are writing down a prayer, go ahead and complete it. Just know that you are being prayed for. As we take a moment and turn inward to that place of the Most High, to the place where we know that we know that we know that we are of the divine, that the divine has its being in and through and as us. How grateful I am to know this truth for myself and for every person that hears this prayer, every person that even just drives by. God and I are one. And as I know that this is the truth of myself, I know that it is the truth of every person. I know that all of those manifestations are assured. For the prayers that we place into the universal law is always met with a yes, my beloved, yes. And I know that each prayer is for the highest and best, not only for the person asking, but for everyone. That it up-levels, brings forth love and peace, harmony and joy, abundance, prosperity, goodness beyond measure. And so naturally, gratitude bubbles up, this gratefulness for knowing that this is the way life works. Gratefulness for being willing to take a stand, to believe so much in ourselves that we go to the universal storehouse and claim our good. And so with an overflowing heart, with so much gratitude, we simply let it be. We call it good and very good. And together we know this truth. And so it is.